guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with my October wrap-up. This is all the books that I read in the second half of October. I only read 13, but I did not read for the past 3 days. Sorry if I appear tired. I was in Vegas for Love in Vegas on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm tired. The time change killed me, and I didn't go to bed till like midnight every night, so that was like 3 a.m. my time, and I couldn't sleep in because I felt like it was too late. So it was just a whole thing, and I'm a little tired today. But I'm here to talk about some amazing books I read that I'm very excited for. So I will get to the books, but I did want to show you the sweatshirt I had made. It is for Shattered Sea by Catherine Cowles. I love it so much. I just did the design in Canva and had 2 printed, so I brought one for her when I saw her in Vegas, and I have one for myself, and I just love the purple and I love the quote, so I wanted to show it to you. But I'll go to get to the books. The first book I read I ended up really liking, and that is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This one was surprisingly very serious though, but the way that the characters talk about death didn't make it feel as serious as it could have been. So the heroine is a ghostwriter for a very famous romance author, kind of like Nora Roberts, and she's been writing for her, but she went through a really bad breakup and doesn't believe in love, doesn't want to write a romance, so she meets with her new editor and was like, the author needs an extension, because she's pretending to be the author's like assistant and not telling her, the guy, that she's a ghostwriter, but he was like, no, you need to write it by tomorrow. So she has all of it done but the end, and she hasn't been able to write, but then she gets a phone call saying her father has passed away. So most of this takes place when she goes and visits her home, and her family owns a funeral parlor, and she is setting up the funeral for her father, and it has her dealing with her relationships with her 2 siblings and her mom, and she starts seeing a ghost. So she is actually able to see ghosts. Her father could do it, and now she can do it, and the ghost that shows up at the funeral home is her editor, and obviously that means he's dead, and she is really confused about why he's there and what he has to get through in order to like cross over the other side kind of thing, but she ends up falling in love with the ghost. So it was a very, very good romance, but like I said, very emotional because she was actually really close with her father, and she had not been home though in quite a few years because she was distancing herself from her family, and now that she's back, she has to learn to ask for help from people because she really has a lot of trouble doing that, and she's falling in love with someone who's dead. So it's a very, very cute romance. It is a romance, so it does have a traditional HEA, I will say that, but it was just a lot of fun. Like I said, it was serious, but her family jokes about death and doesn't take death very seriously, so it didn't feel too somber, if that makes sense. But the romance was adorable. I loved it. I loved having a romance author heroine. I give 5 stars. I definitely recommend it. Then I read Darius by J.R. Ward. This is only available on audio. It will probably be in print soon. It came out a while ago, I think, and this is a shorter book about Darius, who actually died in the first book of the series, and he is the father of Beth, who is the heroine of the first book in the series, and so we get to see his book and his romance, and I thought it was sweet. I gave it 4 stars. I didn't absolutely love it, but I think if you're a fan of the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, you'll really enjoy it. I really did enjoy like watching him see the woman he ends up falling in love with and falling in love with her, and how that played out for the rest of the book, because we know stuff. I don't want to spoil the first book, like we know things had happened and him having his death occur. Like I don't know how to talk about it without spoiling it, but I did really appreciate seeing him interact with some of the other people and how different he was before versus how different he was after, and how different like Wrath was, and it was just a really fun book. But like I said, if I didn't read the series, I probably would have given it 3 stars because I wouldn't really have cared, but since I'm a fan of the series and I have been interested in Darius, I really liked getting to know him and seeing his romance, so I give it 4 stars. It was really quick too, and I love Jim Frangione, who is the narrator of the series, so it was a good time. Then I read Love Life Farms by B.K. Borison. It does have a new cover, but the author sent me her 3 books, and this one has the old cover. It is a Christmas romance, but like Christmas light. It's like a pre-Christmas romance. So the heroine owns a Christmas tree farm. We get it through November and leading up to December. She is really struggling though, taking over this farm, and is not doing well monetarily. And so there is an influencer on social media who likes to go around to different businesses, give them a spotlight, and she applies. But in order to get attention, she decides to say she runs it with her boyfriend because she knows the influencer really likes a good romance. So she needs a fake boyfriend because she is picked to be featured by this influencer. So she approaches her best friend of like 10 years, and she is like, can you fake date me? And they've been best friends for like 10 years at this point, and he says yes, and it's super sweet, their romance is, and they have to act like they're together. So of course it involves like practicing being together and her trying to prepare for this person who is coming, and I had a lot of fun reading this. I think it is super sweet. I gave it 4.5 stars. I do think it got a little slow in the middle, but it does lead up to Christmas. We have a lot of hijinks happening of someone trying to sabotage the farm. I really love the side characters. This author set up their romances very, very well, so I'm very excited for theirs, especially, I think it's the next one is actually a social media influencer with someone she works with. So I just had a lot of fun because they knew each other so much, and they were harboring some feelings, and you're like, why did you wait 10 years to let this happen? But I do love a good friends to lovers romance. I need to do a new video for that because it's one of my favorite tropes, and this one and a book that's gonna be at the end of this video is Friends to Lovers, and it's so good, but definitely recommend reading these. Then I picked up It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. I picked this up the minute I got home from work and read it until I finished. So this one is the newest book, and it is the sequel to It Ends With Us, and I do have a whole reading vlog for this, but I will say I was very disappointed. I gave it 3 stars. It was really boring. So typically when we have multiple books about a couple, like there's conflict. In this one, it was not a lot of conflict. The only conflict was external, and it was boring. Like they were just like happy and seeing each other and figuring out a relationship, and I'm just like, there's not a lot of plot. I love the side plot with a character in Atlas's life, but that's really all I cared about. I feel like there wasn't as much like emotion or stakes in here, and I just feel like it didn't have the passion that Colleen's books normally have. So I can't say for sure, but I feel like this was just Colleen was pressured to write it and wasn't really feeling it, and she just wrote it, and it was fine. I mean, like, it was super romantic. When I was starting it, I was so giddy over Atlas's character and was super excited to see his perspective, but we did get to rehash a lot that was already talked about in book 1, and then just saw them just like together. It was pretty short. It didn't really do anything for me, but I don't love seeing couples happy to love. I need some kind of drama to happen for having a whole book about them. So it did definitely feel like just a giant extended epilogue, and we didn't even get to see though like what people wanted to see like years down the road. We didn't get to see that. It picks up at the end of It Ends With Us and just continues and then ends. So I would have liked to see like later on, but 3 stars. It was just fine. I didn't hate it, but like I expected more. I finally finished the Mr. Kane series, so I finished Loving Mr. Kane by Shanora Williams, and this one I gave 3 stars. It was pretty boring. I didn't hate the book, but I definitely wanted a little bit more from it, especially with the ending of the previous book, and it was a lot dealing with a certain character in here, and it kind of turned like mafia-esque, which like the second book was also turning into, which I didn't really care about. I liked keeping a contemporary billionaire like book 1 was. Like book 1 I give 5 stars. It was so good, but books 2 and 3 just kind of dropped the ball for me. I didn't fully care about them, and it's just a lot of like her parents, I want them to be together, and I'm like, I don't care about your parents and what they want. So I wanted more. But it was very quick, and I breezed through it in like a day, so I'm glad I finally finished the series, but I don't think like they get better as you continue on. They just got okay as you went. I mean, it was a decent series, but again, book 1 was the best. Then I read the audio of The Highlander's Forbidden Bride by Donna Fletcher. I read this as the start of the historical romance readathon. I read 5 historicals and 1 monster historical, but this one I was really excited for because he was kidnapped, and he is going after the woman who was responsible for him kidnapping him and seeking revenge, and he fell in love with a servant while he was kidnapped, but she died, and he's gonna blame this woman, so he kidnaps her, and it was kind of boring. I thought the plot was gonna be so much more exciting, but the pacing was very off because like it was kind of fast-paced, but like slow at the same time. So like something would happen, and then immediately something else would happen, and immediately something else would happen, but it wasn't actually like shown. So like we had one of them got sick, and there was caretaking, and then immediately it was like, oh, the other one got hurt, so there's more caretaking. But I'm like, where's like the actual development of this activity that's happening between them instead of jumping from thing to thing to thing? But also it felt very slow, at least in the progression of their romance. So I wanted a little bit more. The twist was really obvious from the beginning, so I did not fully love it as much as I wanted to, but it was still a fun Highlander romance, and this is the 4th book in the series though, so maybe I was just missing out on a little connection from the previous books, but I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Scandalous by Minerva Spencer on audio. I went into this fully thinking that it was a different book, so I was very confused when I was reading this, and this is one that has like a 3.7 rating on Goodreads, and I was like, that's why, because the other one had like over a 4-point-star rating, and I was like, why am I not liking this like everyone else? Because it was different. This centers around our heroine who is kidnapped, and our hero is a privateer, and he takes down people who are trying to have slaves and do the slave trade and kidnap people, and so he rescues her, and then it's their romance. She helps teach him to read and spends time with him on his ship, and he, though, really pushes her away because he feels like he can never be better in society because of his past as a slave himself, but that's why he works so hard of taking down other people. And it was just okay. It was definitely a huge lull in the middle of just like hanging out on their ship, and a lot of historicals have people just like hanging out talking, and I personally find that pretty boring. So I did like the ending though, where it kind of got more into society, and so they were getting jealous of each other and like pushed them to finally be together. But overall, it was a little lackluster. I gave it 3 stars. Could have been better. Definitely wanted to go back and read book 1 now because this was book 3, but not my favorite. Then I read In a Company of Fiends by Catherine Moon, and I gave this one 3 stars. I feel like I just had a lot of just like mediocre books. This was a bunch of 3-star reads in a row. So this one is a monster romance, and I loved the first book in this series. A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor was so good, but this one was boring. It was interesting because we had so many characters, but I didn't feel like they really developed her relationship with all of the guys, because it is a why choose monster romance, just like the first one was. But there was this murder mystery happening that didn't really have any urgency to it, and then we just had her pretty much hanging out with these guys. There was a lot of on-page steamy time, but it never felt like there was more of a connection between them, and then all of a sudden we had all the guys now involved when I didn't feel that connection. Like normally it's like progresses, like, oh, there's one, and then there's kind of 2, and then there's these other 2, like they slowly form their connections with each other as well. But in this one, it was pretty divided between all of them, and then all of a sudden it was like all of them together, and I was like, this just felt so all of a sudden, wasn't really built up well, and I definitely liked more of the guys than other ones, and the ones I liked did not have at all enough of them introduced and fleshed out. I feel like they were just kind of there, and then she was with them, and I was like, but I want to know more about them. Like the investigator was really cool, investigating the deaths, and then the really rich guy was really interesting, but some of them just, I feel like there was no development with them compared to others, and I just didn't really get the connection, and it was just boring. Like we had this whole murder mystery happening, and it was more prevalent at the beginning and the end, and it was so long. It was way too long, and so for being such a slow book, it was too long. So I gave it 3 stars. I expected a lot more. I still liked her relationship between a lot of the men though, and I liked their characters. It was very unique, but overall, I just wanted a lot more from this. Then I read Rebellion by Nora Roberts, my first Nora Roberts book. This is a historical. It is about the Battle of Culloden. Our hero is actually English, and he comes to Scotland with his friend, and he is fighting on the Scottish side, and his friend's sister is who he's interested in, and she was very hard-headed and strong Scottish woman. Her mother is assaulted by British soldiers in the beginning, so she just absolutely does not trust the English, and she hates him on first sight, but they grow to love each other very quickly, and there's a lot of romances in here that happen like very fast. Like her brother starts having a romance, and she falls for him, and then he goes off to the Battle of Culloden. We all know how that ends, so we're waiting to see who lives and who dies, and it was a really fun book. I did originally give it 3.5 stars because it was very insta-love, but the more I talked about it in my live show, because this was our historical Hellions pick, I wanted to give it 4 stars because the romance was very cute, and I really liked how she hated him and called him Sassenach, but he really liked her, and he wasn't scared to tell her that he liked her, and the ending was sweet. I do wish there was more repercussions from the Battle of Culloden on their personal family, because I feel like it was a little too easy for certain people. I don't want to spoil anything, but like I expected more of repercussions of the people who died than who did die. So I don't want to spoil anything, but overall, it was a fun read. I'm glad I read some Nora Roberts, and I can't wait to read more from her. Then I read A Matter of Temptation by Stacey Reed. This one was so good. I ended up listening to this audiobook. It is a new narrator for the series. If you didn't like the narrator for My Darling Duke, definitely try this book out because this is a different narrator, and it was really good. So our heroine's estate is crumbling down. I believe it's her twin brother who inherited everything, and he is not doing a good job at it, and he tells her like they're really struggling, and he was trying to win money illegally by cheating and gambling, and someone called him out on it, and he got defensive and proposed a duel, and she's like, you're literally gonna die. Like, you are not being smart. So she is actually a lot better at sword fighting than her brother is at using the rapier. She decides to trick him and fight in his place for this Earl, and she beats the Earl, and the Earl discovers she's a woman, is very intrigued, and hires her as his secretary. And so he is trying to get this bill passed and uses her as his secretary, but there's intense passion and chemistry between them. It was so good. I really love this. I love the heroine and how she was taking on a role that wasn't typically for women, but she was determined to work and save her household, and obviously falling for each other. There was a lot of really great banter in here as well, which I loved, and I just really liked it. It was making me super excited to read historicals again, and it was so good. Highly recommend reading this. Definitely pick it up. I give it 5 stars. Then I read Yours Until Dawn by Teresa Medeiros. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it was absolutely amazing. So our hero was in the military, I think. Yeah, and he ended up becoming blind and scarred, like heavily scarred on his face, and he lost his vision. And so he is super angry, and he scares off any nurse he may have. His staff just kind of like skitters around and tries not to upset him, and she ends up being hired as his new nurse, and she is so different from any other nurse. She is not going to take his crap. She's putting him in his place, and she is changing his life. She's like, we're opening all the curtains, we're dusting everything, we're moving things out of his way, like we're gonna make life better for him, and he's gonna deal. And they end up falling for each other, and the tension between these two, like longing touches and just banter between them, but they really like each other a lot. And there is a huge twist in here that I did not see coming. You guys, my jaw dropped when I got to this twist. It was our pick for the historical romance readathon, our group pick, and we were talking about that, and some people like, it was so obvious from the beginning, and I was like, no, it wasn't. I had no idea that this was our secret that was happening all along, but I'm obsessed. Like, some parts of the end made some people mad from some choices the hero made, but this was so good. Like, one of my new favorite historical romances. I gave it 5 stars. Could not recommend this enough. If you are interested in historical romances, please pick up Teresa Medeiros. I cannot wait to read more of her backlist. I'm obsessed. This book, 5 stars. I actually lied. I think I read 14 books actually. So I ended up reading The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. I'm trying to read books that I think are going to end up on the Goodreads Choice Award list for the end of the year, and this one, I know Catherine Center always ends up on that list, and this was actually really cute. I did give it 4 stars, but I think I'm being a little too nitpicky, but I'll see what you guys think. So this one is a bodyguard romance where the heroine is the bodyguard, and she works for this like elite team of bodyguards, and she did not feel like an elite bodyguard. Like, there were so many things that she missed and she was kind of oblivious to, and I'm like, you are supposed to be like superior and highly trained at these things, and you're not acting like super professional. So that kind of bothered me, but she ends up getting the job to bodyguard a famous actor who has a stalker, and his mom, I believe, is in the hospital, and so he needs a fake girlfriend to be his bodyguard so that she can follow him around and people won't know he has a bodyguard, and it's their romance. So I ended up really liking the romance, but again, I'm just like, you are being not smart in certain situations, and that was enough to make me annoyed enough to drop me down a star rating, especially things that happen at the end. But also, I did not love the ex-boyfriend drama because she broke up with her boyfriend in the beginning, she was mad, and then she figured something else out, and I was like, I really don't care about this ex-boyfriend. So overall, I gave it 4 to 5 stars. It was really enjoyable. I definitely had a lot of fun. It definitely read more like a romance than some of the other books that I put on that list that are from authors that are primarily more women's fiction authors, but this one's definitely romance, and I had a lot of fun. The one I forgot I read that I listened to on audio and finished right before I left for my trip is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. So I really enjoyed her first book, loved her second book, did not like her third book, so I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this one, but this is so good. Definitely, I feel like more romance heavy than the previous book, Life's Too Short, but this one is a small town guy, city girl. She is super, super wealthy. She works for a hospital. She's a doctor, and she is dating a surgeon, and he has like some big title at the hospital too, and her family, it's like a legacy at this hospital that they've always had someone at this hospital, and her brother's also a surgeon, but her brother just got married to a pop star and is leaving to be with her and knows the family will not approve. Her family is very, very hard on her, and she ends up having a one-night stand when her car is broken down in this small town with a guy who is like 10 years younger than her. I don't know if it's quite 10, it might be like 8, but they have a one-night stand and they really, really hit it off, and she really likes him, and he lives 2 hours away in a really small town, and she finds herself keeping on coming back and falling for him but not wanting to be in a relationship, and he is the absolute sweetest. Like, I'm obsessed with the hero in this book. I loved him so much, and I really did understand the heroine's reluctance to be with him because of how much her family means to her and her family's opinion of her means to her, and it was just so good. It was so good. I was obsessed with this, and the ending was a little annoying because it was like, stop letting everybody else dictate your life and just go for what you want. But that's the kind of person she was, so I kind of understood that aspect about her, and it was just really good. I really liked this one, and there was a lot of back and forth and angst at the end because he wasn't afraid to admit, like, I like you and I want you, and she was the one who was hesitant because of her family drama and her ex still being around, and he was definitely very verbally abusive to her and emotionally abusive, and she still had people wanting them to be together. And she's like, I've told you how he treated me and how horrible a person he was. And they're like, well, he can change, it's fine. So I definitely fell for a heroine, and I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I was so impressed. It was so good. And the last book I read, I finished on the plane going to Vegas, and it was Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt. I gave this book 5 stars. Oh my gosh. So I know Caitlin from The Love Librarian is obsessed with this book, and so I picked it up, and the heroine is a comedian. Now, I don't love like comedy, so I was very hesitant picking this one up, but I really liked how the comedy was integrated in here and how it didn't like overrun the book though. Like, it was very thoughtfully placed where we saw certain parts of her job and her shows and her jokes. And she has been working with the hero though for a couple of years. He was also a comedian, and now he is her manager. They're like best friends, and he has a daughter who is deaf. And so when they first meet the heroine, she immediately jumps into ASL with his daughter, and he is shocked. And she gets along so well with his daughter, and that really pulled him towards the heroine, and they started working together. And so they are super close with one another, but they've never crossed that line, even though we get flashbacks of times where they both definitely wanted to. So there's always been this sort of attraction, and he is older, and he is so grumpy, and he is graying. I don't know what it was about that description of him. I just loved him so much, and this romance was super sweet. But they have to fake date because she is going to go on tour with these other female comedians. It's like the chance of a lifetime for her, and they want to drum up interest. And they said, you know, like, people are obsessed with our love lives. If you get in the media, maybe it'll drum up even more attention for our show, because he was a pretty well-off comedian before he decided to go more behind the scenes, and it's just so cute. I love their dates. I loved how close they got to each other, and they just love like touching each other, like always like holding hands or just being close to one another. It was just so sweet. It was so good. If you want just a super sweet, feel-good, cozy romance that was still had some spice, definitely pick up this book. I don't know if I mentioned it. I gave it 5 stars, so I loved it. And those are all the books that I read in the month of October. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are and what your favorite book of the month was. I would love to hear. I will also link down below my first half of the month's wrap up if you're interested in checking that out. And that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.